Ukraine's GDP, after falling 30% in 2022, is going to be growing by 4.5% this year. 90% of the companies in Ukraine are now fully operational. So the rebuilding is underway, and it's truly going to be a global undertaking.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Jane Edmondson, the head of index product strategy at TMX VettaFi. Jane, very good to speak with you. We're in the fourth year of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Until the conflict ends in a peaceful resolution, is it too early to be investing in Ukraine's reconstruction?
Well, I can see why investors might be asking that question, given the war remains ongoing between Russia and Ukraine. But there is essential infrastructure, such as energy and transportation, that's already being rebuilt. And many companies are laying the foundation to enter Ukraine for the first time. And those that are already there are scaling up their operations for when peace finally does come. But I think the greatest evidence that there is a recovery already underway is that Ukraine's GDP, after falling 30% in 2022, is going to be growing by 4.5% this year. 90% of the companies in Ukraine are now fully operational. So the rebuilding is underway. And it's truly going to be a global undertaking. And there's going to be partnership and investment coming from Europe, Asia, the Americas, the Middle East, and beyond. And the capital is going to be coming from both public and private sources.
So what's the estimated cost of reconstruction expected to be? How much investment will be necessary to rebuild Ukraine?
Yeah, so there's a report that comes out every year called the Ukraine Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment. And it's released by the Ukraine government, the World Bank, the EU Commission, and the United Nations. And it came out last February, estimating the current need for reconstruction recovery to be about $589 billion. And that equates to about 510 billion euros. It's an amount equivalent to nearly 3 times Ukraine's nominal GDP. So, of course, those estimates are based on a report that came out last February. The actual damage assessments are probably going to go much higher. That was just through the end of 2025. So it's going to be a very big number. And the largest recovery needs for reconstruction are going to be in areas like transportation, energy, and housing. That's going to require about 90 billion in funding each. And while public funding from the EU remain essential, many of the reconstruction needs are going to be financed from the private sector. Foreign direct investment is estimated by Citi might reach as much as 87 to 145 billion, and that contributes about 15 to 25% of the total funding needs as well. So this truly is a global investable theme from a product perspective, and there's going to be many public companies involved in Ukraine's reconstruction. And I think it's also interesting and important to note that Ukraine is committed to sustainable development. So they have a plan called Build Back Better, and the reconstruction plans are going to include measures such as clean energy, sustainable agriculture, green transportation, environmental goals that are really in alignment with the rest of the EU.
Can you get into how this product was designed to get exposure to the investable opportunities, Jane?
Sure. So to qualify for inclusion, a company must be a Ukrainian security, and that's defined by either domicile or headquarters, or a leading player in some of these critical recovery sectors. So again, that's things like energy, infrastructure, and defense. And non-Ukrainian companies are eligible, but they have to belong to business segments which are expected to benefit from the increased investment. So, of course, we're going back to that, again, the Ukraine Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment to identify which segments those are. And they include things like construction and infrastructure, defense and engineering, building materials and equipment, and energy transition. And then the other thing we take into account is geographical. We are favoring Ukrainian companies, which makes sense, but then also European companies for areas like defense and infrastructure, again, due to their closer proximity to Ukraine. And we also allow for exposure to global industrial names, but only if they are involved in recovery areas, and we do cap that weighting exposure. So let me share maybe a few names with the listeners of companies that are in the portfolio. In the Ukrainian company category, there's a company called Swarmer, which is a drone software firm. Ukraine's drone technology has become unmatched, and having been developed in, really in real time on the battlefield. So it's a very important Ukrainian name. There's a telecom giant, Kyivstar, which is based in Ukraine, which obviously going to be very involved in the recovery there. Ferex Pro, which is an iron ore pellet producer, also with major operations in Ukraine. So there are some Ukrainian companies. And then outside of Ukraine, we have industrial and infrastructure companies like Caterpillar, Vinci, CRH, which is actually an Irish building materials firm that has core operations in Ukraine, and AB, which is a Swedish company. In the electrical and energy specialist category, we have Siemens, Schneider, Eaton, Emerson, all names probably that you're familiar with. And then for defense and aerospace, again, we're focused on the European names. Think names like BAE Systems, Rheinmetall, and Dassault. So the key takeaway here, I think, is that Ukraine's construction, even though the war is still going on, is already underway. And it's going to be playing out with more project visibility and investment in the coming years, really over the next decade. And the Defiance Ukraine Reconstruction UCITS ETF offers exposure to the recovery and future growth of Ukraine.
Well, Jane, thanks as always for your insights. Great speaking with you today.
Thank you very much, Stephen.